and good morning. Thanks for having us. I'm Lennart Ripke from Green-Jakobsen. We are a human performance company. We deal, so to speak, with the human element first and foremost, so that you can keep this in mind while I talk here about the topic of today. So one of the things that we are looking at is human performance in a rapidly changing world. So obviously we have heard all morning already about all the challenges that we meet and maybe the opportunities that lie in these challenges. That we have obviously digital transformation, a lot of new fuels coming up. In short, we are heading for more automation on the vessels. Obviously we need to understand system integration a lot better. We need to understand data streams, how our sensors work in much more detail. We know this from an example from the jamming and spoofing that we experience a lot in Europe now. Some have done already a lot of research there, a lot of training. In the maritime industry, we are a little bit behind. Another thing is that the navigator and also the engineer, we become more and more, or we get more and more into a monitoring role. But then at the same time, and the gentleman on the floor here said it on the last discussion, all the old issues, they remain. We still have cargo that liquefies. We still have people that suffocate in void spaces. So what that means, we still have all the old challenges. We still need to be able to be the old seafarer at times. And at the same time, we need to be able to be a new seafarer. Increased technical complexity over all levels, as I said, a lot of new fuels coming in. I spoke this morning with a very lovely gentleman from OSM Tommy, who's a superintendent, who actually could verify some of these challenges. And we don't have any best practices yet. Obviously, that is very top-down regulation-based, so that is why best practices need a long time. But others have been there before us. And I will talk briefly about the aviation industry. I know we are not the same industry, so there's a lot of differences. But that doesn't mean that everyone in the aviation industry is just too stupid to join the maritime industry. They have some clever people there. And I would like to have a brief look at what they do right, and why did they learn. Well, one of the things is obviously they carry people, so there is a lot more scrutiny. There's a little bit more eyes on that, especially in terms of media, right? And when we look at the FAA and the EASA, whose regulatory bodies in the aviation industries, one thing that they always state is we can't lose all the old skills that we had. And they have learned that the hard way. In the early 2000s, they actually had a number of incidents. I have chosen two, the Air France 447 and the Asiana Airlines 214. Both disasters were actually on airliners that were fully air capable. There was nothing technically wrong with these airplanes. Asiana Airlines was a training flight, slightly technically disadvantaged. ILS, so that's the guiding system essentially that brings an airliner down to the airport. In San Francisco was out of order, so that was a visual approach. And they still switched to automatic modes. Simply a lack of understanding what was the situation. Air France, very similar thing. They actually had the autopilot engaged, and then for some reason, for a technical reason, the autopilot automatically disengaged, and they didn't realize this very late, and then they took over manually, but they were not understanding again the situation, had a much too steep angle of attack, meaning they stalled the airplane and the airplane crashed and all lives were lost in that disaster, unfortunately. What that means is when we look at these disasters, what is very, very important is what we call the mental model. They had not the mental model in mind what was going on. They simply thought that something else was going on. And that is something that obviously hinders detection of error. And then if we do not understand what's going on, we can't solve that issue. And that is something that we will experience in the maritime industry too. as we progress into a lot of new technologies. I'm pretty sure about that. All others industry have. I'm pretty sure we won't be the only ones who never experience this. And we actually have experienced the same in the past. The interesting part is, what did the aviation industry learn from that? One thing that the aviation industry has is what they call a personal currency program. Or you can say that they actually require everybody to stay up to date. It's very different from the maritime industry. In the maritime industry, it's the ship operator, the ship manager, ship owner. They are pushing all the seafarers to be updated. We have the crew conferences where some poor superintendent and HSE officer is doing their dancing on the stage, trying to explain to seafarers what's actually going on. In the aviation industry, this is a shared responsibility. They have the industry regulatory bodies that take 1/3 of that responsibility. They have the airline carriers, the operators, but they also have a personal responsibility with each and every pilot to stay up to date, to keep their knowledge up to date. And it's quite interesting. We just had the SAFETY4SEA in Athens. And in Athens, there's a hell of a lot of seafarers, active seafarers living there. There was very, very few in that room. Correct, Apple? Our seafarers are unfortunately not intrinsically interested in actually getting new knowledge. And that is something that is different in the aviation industry. That might be a pact that we should pursue as an industry with our seafarers. That, hey guys, it's nice that we carry you to all the events, trainings, officer conferences, but you also need to pick up the ball. And that is not only digital literacy, as Elinong has said in the previous panel. There's also human literacy. It's surprising how little human literacy we have among our seafarers, very often. Another thing is that in the aviation industry, all airline carriers are required to have a human factors manager, somebody who is responsible for just managing human factors. We are getting there slowly. I see that there is progress. Are we getting there fast enough? Maybe not. Another thing, flight debrief. It's very interesting again, because we have a pilot flying and a pilot monitoring on every airplane. Every commercial airplane has that. On the bridge, I'm an ex-deck officer. If it was daylight, I was alone, so I had to debrief with myself. Think, oh, Mr. Ripke, was that good or was it not? Difficult. But then this morning I met a gentleman from Fleet Vision. That's a camera system on the bridge, coupled to an AI. Maybe that's something that can help me to actually debrief with myself when there's nobody else. So that is actually something where I think that we also should have some learning, is, do I have a debrief? Or how do I actually handle criticism? So the aviation industry has very good tools for that, and I think that we could learn from that. As I said, in the maritime industry, best practice reliance, we are not very outcome focused, so to speak. We are procedural focused. And we are focused on everybody just do the right things at the right time. We don't care if they really understand it or not. The problem with that is, as soon as we change the circumstances, they can't do it right anymore because they do not really understand it. As I said, stuck with old work models, no debrief, no navigator monitoring, and as I said, that could be an AI, an example. We have strict hierarchies. We are working with a German company, and there the master is really still master next to God. It's quite frightening. Nobody criticizes that person. And we do not spend dedicated time and space for critical reflection. That's a brief learning moment from my own career, where I had a master who was challenging me that suddenly the color on the actors changed because he was only used to paper charts. You can see that I joined the maritime industry a while ago when that was a thing. Again, no understanding what was actually happening on the actors as a master. Human performance during change. As I said, it's about the mental model, it's about the human factors, It's about that we can have clear communication with each other. We need to legalize critical feedback, have time for reflection, and focus on continuous learning and personal responsibility. That's it. That was my brief take, and that's actually what we do in Green-Jakobsen. Thank you.